with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
EmMajority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, December 7th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Cory Doctorow will be with us to talk about his most recent book, The Internet Con: How to Seize the Means of Computation. And later in the show, Raga Makawi will be with us to talk about the mass atrocities occurring right now in Sudan. Meanwhile, it's been 2 months since October 7th and Israel's near daily carpet bombing of Gaza. The death toll is now 17,000 and over 2 million displaced. After forcing Gazans to go south to the city of Khan Yunis, now Israel is telling them to go further south to Rafah, which Israel is also bombing. A Reuters investigation finds that an Israeli tank killed its journalist, Issam Abdallah, who was clearly identified as a member of the press in October. A reminder that Reuters was criticized for using passive language in that case, and now they determined that it was Israel. The White House its proposed arms package includes a provision that would waive congressional notifications for future weapons packages to Israel. Seems bad. Republicans in the Senate voted to block that package, though, which needs 60 votes. Because of Ukraine aid and a lack of border wall funding, Bernie Sanders was the only Democrat to vote no. House Republicans are busy at work, though. They're crafting an effort to censure Jamal Bowman for accidentally pulling the fire alarm in an adjacent building. Meanwhile, the ethics probe into Matt Gaetz' conduct with minors has at least one witness, and Republicans are continuing the Democrats' probe, which started in 2021. So somewhere Kevin McCarthy is smiling. Democrats, Merkley in the Senate and Adam Smith in the House, introduced a bill that would bar hedge funds from owning single-family homes, requiring them to sell before the full ban takes effect in 10 years, which I think is a great piece of legislation. The Biden administration has determined that it has the authority to seize the patents of certain high-priced medicines. So next step is doing it. 3 people were killed by a gunman on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas campus. The gunman was killed by police, a former professor in his 60s. And lastly, Eric Adams' approval rating falls to 28%, the worst in the history of Quinnipiac's polling of New York City mayors. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Feels like we live at this office these days because we were here late night covering the final GOP debate. Perhaps the most inconsequential of them all, but maybe the most fun because we got some props. I mean, Vivek, rhymes with cake, brought a Sharpie and a notepad and then wrote Nikki equals corrupt. So saying it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah, I think people who didn't watch last night, the one thing that was interesting was how hard Vivek went at Nikki Haley.
Oh, he hates her,
Yeah,
and she hates him.
exactly.
I mean, they don't even acknowledge each other after the debate's over. And Christie was white knighting for her. You can see where the orientation of the money on the Republican Party is at.
And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but that little challenge of she can't name the counties in Ukraine, provinces in Ukraine that she wants to save.
He kept saying that.
She did look a little bit nervous about that challenge, I must say. I wonder if she could name one.
But I just do find it funny that Vivek crammed for the debate and memorized a bunch of Ukrainian provinces and was like, this is how I'm going to get Nikki.
Right.
This is how I'm going to get her.
It was the
Also,
classic, like, oh, you listen to Slayer? Name 5 songs.
Yeah, right.
But also, and then the thing where he's like trying to square his Israel thing of like, yeah, I think we should be isolationists and not help anybody. And it's like, well, do you want us to fund Israel? It's like, I think me and Bibi should both fight our terrorists together and high five each other at the same time.
Right. And that's how much I respect Israel. It was a bizarre display, especially because, Donald Trump was not there, and he has an insurmountable lead at this point. We will get to Trump, I think, later in the program, refusing to say he wouldn't be a dictator on Sean Hannity's program. But first, let's talk here about, obviously, the continued atrocities in Gaza. It's been now 2 months since October 7th. I said this earlier, but the death toll is now around 17,000 in Gaza. And, we have these kind of statements made by Blinken and the White House about how Israel is working towards efforts to minimize civilian casualties, and there is zero
Blinken,
evidence
the guy
to that
who was going
effect.
around the Middle East asking, hey, will you take these Gazans?
Right, but essentially, like, just conceding the point that the ethnic cleansing is gonna happen.
Running errands for an ethnic cleansing using American, taxpayer money. Thanks, Blinken.
And the idea that is just a foregone conclusion should be deeply troubling to anybody that has a conscience. But apparently, the White House seemingly is ideologically committed to supporting Israel no matter what, and that's Blinken and Biden together. There has been a shift in tone, but I feel that's...
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, right. If it's indicative of how things are changing behind the scenes, that's good, but it's still not enough.
No.
And, hopefully Netanyahu is facing some semblance of pressure from the Americans. Again, not enough, but hopefully some semblance of it. The international community, every country that, isn't basically the US, Germany, the UK, is raising alarm bells and is outraged. I mean, you can see that reflective in the votes from a few weeks ago in the United Nations, how isolated America is on this. And that, I would hope, is at least going to have some effect. But what Netanyahu also has to deal with, and he doesn't care about the Palestinians, that's clear. He's enthusiastically mass murdering them at this point. So the lawn mowing is that's already a given at this point. All he cares about is the domestic pressure that he's going to be facing, because from the perspective of the hostages' families, the carpet bombing of the place where the hostages have been taken doesn't maybe seem like the best idea if your primary concern is, and for the families, that's their primary concern, is the safety of their family members. Now, Netanyahu doesn't care. That's becoming abundantly clear at this point. The primary objective is annihilating as many people in Gaza as humanly possible. Retribution and ethnic cleansing is first, and the safety of the Israeli hostages is secondary. And this audio leaked here. It was published in part on the Israeli news site Ynet, and there are subtitles here which I will read for the podcast audience. This was leaked audio of a meeting between the freed Israeli hostages and Netanyahu, and you'll hear a woman here. She was abducted and freed along with her children, but her husband remains in captivity. And this is her in the meeting with Netanyahu, basically ripping into him. You're putting politics over returning the hostages. And you think the men are strong? My husband was hitting himself every day, punching his own face until he would bleed, because it was unbearable for him. And now he's alone. And God knows in what conditions. And all you're thinking about is collapsing Hamas. fucking give them back whoever they want and bring everybody back. The women, the men. I was diapering elderly women. I watched R.A. Zalmanovich die next to me, and this is what you have to say? That's what you want to collapse Hamas's rule? That you want to collapse Hamas's rule? That you want to show them who has bigger balls? No one's life is more important than another. None of, alright, pause it for a sec, sorry. No one of us there is worthy, this is just like some odd grammar, of less attention than any resident in Israel. Okay, keep going. It's illogical that Hamas comes before us. You will bring everybody back, and not next month. They won't wait another 50 days. They won't wait until because you claim they're strong enough. Or that you have enough intel. You have no intel.
Yeah.
Look how we were bombed. It's a fact that no one knew anything about our whereabouts. Respect, people are saying to her. So, I mean, that's on point, and that's clear there.
This needs to be echoed by leaders outside of Israel. Because within Israel, there's still a huge, this is poll results hawkish, 57% of Israeli Jews, they believe that IDF was using too little firepower, 36 says was using just amount, so just 1.8 say it was using too much. So let's not overstate the degree to which Bibi is not supported with regards to his bombing of Gaza. The only way that this sort of ember, and Ilan Pappy said this when he was here, the only way those embers of righteousness really become flames is if they're blown on from outside of the society. And that's why what Biden and Blinken and even Bernie Sanders, which I appreciate the votes, but you got to stop undermining the international effort toward a ceasefire. Yep. You just can't, no one's going to hear a single thing you're saying until you stop undermining what the international left is saying. We need to help these people because like this is an urgent, like you could see death squads toward people who are speaking out against this war with the degree to which there's I think a pro war hysteria, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, I think, we saw the protests within Israel in support of the hostages and their families who are echoing many of these sentiments, obviously, seeing increasingly that this is Netanyahu feeling like this is an existential threat to his continued rule over Israel, where he needs to continue to play up the threat so that the war can continue, so that he can have his wartime government, so that he can delay the investigations into him, which, it came out a few days ago that his lawyer had successfully gotten the number of hearings down about his corruption charges from 3 times a week to 2 because he is so wrapped up in this war in Gaza. Like, this is in the same way that getting elected for Trump here in the United States is existential for his survival, and he feels that the only way he's going to stay out of prison is to become president. Netanyahu feels something quite similar in Israel as it relates to the continued crimes of genocide in Gaza. And I say that because I wanted to read this account in The Independent from a doctor. And content warning, you will hear things that are disturbing, but this is the kind of stuff that needs to be repeated so people really understand what's happening. A badly burned toddler screaming for the mother he doesn't know is dead, and screaming because doctors do not have enough painkillers to relieve his suffering. An 8-year-old boy whose brain is exposed as bombing damaged parts of his skull. A teenage girl, her eyes surgically removed because every bone in her face is smashed. A 3-year-old double amputee whose severed limbs are laid out in the pink box beside him. And in the background is the stench of rotting flesh as maggots creep out of untreated wounds. This is the daily reality at the European hospital inside the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, as described by veteran British war surgeon Tom Potakar, who works for the International Committee of the Red Cross. In recent days, Israeli forces have started to storm Khan Yunis, the largest city in southern Gaza, launching what is believed to be the biggest ground assault since a fragile 7-day truce collapsed last week. Inside the European hospital, one of the main medical centers servicing the city and surrounding areas, medics struggle to treat the relentless stream of wounded, Dr. Potikar says, and nearly half of them are children. I've lost count of the number of children we have treated who have horrific injuries, burns, amputations, who've lost their whole family, Dr. Potikar tells The Independent from inside the hospital compound, which, like other medics, he has not left for 5 weeks. Palestinian and international medics are sleeping on the floor of the nursing quarters, living off packets of noodles and working 14-hour shifts, he explains. One night, Dr. Potikar says he was nearly killed by shrapnel, which came through a window. Some medics, including nursing staff and surgeons like Dr. Potikar worked with, have been killed. That Dr. Potikar worked with have been killed alongside dozens of members of their family. At least one of the 100 ICRC staff working in Gaza has also been killed. Recently, Dr. Potikar was treating burn patients in an intensive care unit who had fled north of the country and whose wounds were septic, as the dressing had not been changed for days. On the bed next to Burns' patient was a 3-year-old boy. He had 2 above-knee amputations done the night before the airstrike. I found out afterwards that his father had also had an amputation, and the rest of the family didn't make it, Dr. Potikar says. This is not a one-off event. The point here is that, again, I said this the other day, the violence is not just reflective in the death totals. The terrorist attack in Israel that killed around 1,200 Israelis, you know, the continued violence from that is the taking of the hostages and the trauma that results from that. But the continued violence in Gaza extends far beyond the death totals to tens of thousands maimed in that same way, and many who will die in hospitals because of the lack of care, and the violence of displacement and the violence of becoming homeless. So we're talking about an unprecedented scale of destruction and violence at this point. And the brutality of that and the international recognition of that, hopefully, I've got to pray, will eventually, get to Netanyahu. But it's seemingly the domestic stuff, and that is going to be the thing. Like, that's the poker in his ass.
The first firewall to crack is liberal Zionists domestically who need to wake up and put on big boy pants and realize that actually there is a contradiction between going after Hamas and saving the hostages. Blinken tweeted out on October 8th, we support Turkey's efforts for a ceasefire and so we can start getting rid of hostages. Israel has plenty of Palestinians caged. They had plenty before October 7th. They have even more sense that they can start using to trade for hostages. They don't want to because they said, well, actually, we're more concerned about terrorism. We're more concerned about, and the truth is, you can give all the Palestinians, free all of them from the prisons, and the only thing that you need to do to stop on October 7th from happening again is guard the concentration camp and stop guarding the settlers in occupied territories. And so like that, you don't care about hostages thing. That's projection. That's Bibi Netanyahu. And we have this guy here who's a former U.S. intelligence analyst. And I know we got to go, but former U.S. intelligence analyst. Oh, crap. I have it. Oh, you have it? Okay. Yeah, it's a long clip, but I think we have the point here. And the Zionist right is plenty honest about the contradiction. Between
It's not that long?
No, it's just the time code.
Okay, it's just the time code. I mean, let's play it then. Let's play it.
That's the point. When we declared war, they declared war a long time ago. We just caught up with them. When we declared war, the first thing that the government should have done was declare a state of national emergency and told all of the hostage families, you will keep your mouths shut or we will shut them for you. You will not interfere in our management of this war. You will not be used by the international community or by our own leftists who managed the Shalit deal.
Yeah, pause it now.
As a weapon against us.
You, person who has somebody being held hostage, won't be used. Like, no, they're not. They're trying to work toward their own ends.
Yep. Yeah, no, you will not get in the way of us using your trauma and pain for our own expansionist aims. Sounds a little similar to what the Israeli government has been doing for 75 years with Jewish trauma and pain more broadly.
And that's Jonathan Pollard, who is a U.S. citizen and a former Israeli spy.
Yep, jailed for spying for Israel.
All right, folks. Quick break, and when we come back, we'll be speaking with Cory Doctorow. We are back, and we are joined now by Cory Doctorow, science fiction author, activist, journalist, author of many, many books, and his most recent book is called The Internet Con: How to Seize the Means of Computation. Cory, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That's actually my latest nonfiction book. I wrote 9 books during lockdown, and a novel just came out called The Lost Cause, which is a solar punk utopian novel that Rebecca Solnit and Kim Stanley Robinson, Naomi Klein all love. But I'm happy to talk about The Internet Con because that is my most recent nonfiction.
Nonfiction. I should have known, honestly, but it's hard to keep up. You're so damn busy. But everything you write, you've been on the show before. You're an excellent writer and author, and couldn't encourage people more to pick up your fiction work, but also your nonfiction work here, The Internet Con, which is a really great read, and something I think that could be a great stocking stuffer around the holidays because it's accessible, and I think that's a great plus for the book, honestly. And your book pulls no punches. It's really a how-to for destroying big tech, not tweaking it, dismantling it for good. You make that abundantly clear, and why was that so important for you to do?
Well, look, I think we've had a couple of decades of real policy failure around big tech, where we observe these tech barons like Mark Zuckerberg rising to these positions of unelected authority, effectively being the social media czar for 4 billion people for life. And we observe that he is very bad at this job, objectively speaking. And we say, okay, we need to make him better at that job or find someone else to do that job. And so you see things like hateful content rules and rules about other kinds of takedown, copyright infringement, and so on. And all of these just end up making him stronger, right? Because what we say is, you need more power so you can enforce these rules that we are imposing on you. But there's another way to do this, which is to get rid of him, right? To abolish Mark Zuckerberg, abolish big tech, to devolve control of technology to its users. The subtitle of the book is Seize the Means of Computation, right? To let people make their own mistakes, which they will make, but to also have the remedy of going elsewhere or changing the rules for themselves.
Right. And I mean, these tech giants here, you also make it clear that this current construction of the internet didn't have to be this way. Like, there was an alternate vision, but then the tech giants became the tech giants. So, I guess if I were to summarize that in one word, I'd use the word enclosure, perhaps, right? In terms of like the way that these tech giants were able to commodify everything on the internet, which once was like there was a promise of it being much freer and more open. And then if I were to summarize the solution in one word, I'd probably say antitrust. So how'd I do, Cory?
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, not bad, right? I think that you're right that there's this element of enclosure, right? The reduction of the internet into what Tom Eastman calls 5 giant websites filled with screenshots of text from the other 4 was like an actual set of policy choices that had this foreseeable outcome and then produced it. And I'd say that the 2 big policy choices, that one follows from the other, was first to draw down antitrust broadly, We're at the tail end of a 40-year experiment in allowing monopoly formation on the grounds that if everyone is using a single product or service, that probably means that that service is something people like, and so we shouldn't do anything to prevent it from forming. And this has produced, across the board monopolies. My last nonfiction book with Rebecca Giblin was called Choke Point Capitalism, and it's about creative labor markets and really about how creative labor can operate in a market where you have 5 giant publishers, 4 giant studios, 3 giant labels, 2 companies that do all the ad tech, and 1 company that controls all the bookings and live performance venues. And that pattern is replicated across many sectors, from beer to bottle caps, banking to intermodal shipping to professional wrestling and cheerleading. You have between 1 and 5 companies controlling entire sectors. And so that's definitely true of tech. And the way that you get there is not the great forces of history bearing down on the moment to produce winner-take-all markets, but rather, permissiveness towards predatory acquisitions. So you have a company like Google that made one good product 25 years ago, a search engine, and then everything else they've made internally, almost without exception, has failed. Their RSS readers and their social media platforms and even their own video platform all failed. But nevertheless, they have grown to be a multi-trillion-dollar company by buying and operationalizing other people's companies, video, ad tech, servers, collaboration, maps. All of these are other people's ideas that they bought. And so historically, that would have been prohibited. And we stopped prohibiting that, so companies could grow by acquisition. Apple buys 90 companies a year. Like Tim Cook comes home with a new company for his shareholders more often than you bring a bag of groceries home to your family. But we also let them do predatory pricing. So they sold goods below cost in order to keep new market entrants out, which let them get bigger and bigger. When Amazon tried to buy diapers.com and were told that diapers.com wasn't for sale, they just started offering diapers at below cost. And $100 million in losses later, diapers.com went out of business. Amazon bought them for pennies on the dollar and then shut them down. And now everybody buys their diapers at Amazon. They made back that $100 million loss many times over by doing this predatory pricing. And again, that was illegal until, roughly speaking, the Carter or the Reagan administration.
Well, I think
so that's one way that you get.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Cory, I just wanted to talk about that shift there. I mean, you write about Robert Bork and his influence over this kind of antitrust, I would say the allowing of monopolies, right, and the consumer welfare philosophy that he embodied. Can you talk a bit about that and that role in the dynamics you describe?
Sure. Approximately speaking, we used to have this standard for antitrust that was grounded in the idea of harmful dominance. That when a company gets too big, it becomes too big to fail and too big to jail. Some people might have heard of the Sherman Act, the first antitrust act passed in 1890 by Senator John Sherman, who was the brother of Tecumseh Sherman. And when John Sherman was briefing for this law on the Senate floor, he said, if we would not allow a king to rule America, we shouldn't allow an autocrat of trade to determine how we attain the necessities of our lives or work for our wages. And that when a company gets too big, it becomes impossible to discipline either by competition or by regulation, or, these days, I think we would also understand that it becomes impossible to discipline through labor organizing, that really large companies are able to crush their unions unless you get these heroic measures like we've had just very recently, but which we didn't have for a couple of decades there. And so when we get to the Reagan era, you get this guy, Robert Bork. You might know his name from the expression that is so borked.
Yeah.
Borked as an adjective refers to Robert Bork's disastrous performance during his Senate confirmation hearing for the Supreme Court, which went so badly he never got his seat in the Senate. He had been Richard Nixon's Solicitor General. He was just an all-round creep and white nationalist and just several kinds of monster.
Right.
But he went on instead to be a kind of court sorcerer to Reagan, along with people like Milton Friedman, with this idea that monopolies are probably good. That when you see a monopoly in the wild, what it tells you is not that a company has managed to dirty trick its way to dominance, but rather that it's done something so incredibly great that people are just buying their stuff there instead of somewhere else. And so the shift to what was called consumer welfare said that you should only break up monopolies or prevent them from forming if you can show that they are either raising prices or lowering costs as a result of their dominance. So not only would you have to observe something like what we have now, where a company called Luxottica Essilor owns every eyewear brand you've ever heard of, Dolce & Gabbana and Bausch & Lomb and whatnot. They also own every store you've ever bought eyeglasses in. They own Sunglass Hut, and they own Lens Crafters and many other store brands. And they own the largest eyewear insurer, and they make more than 50% of the world's optical lenses. And they've raised the price of glasses by 1,000% in the last decade. But Robert Bork would say, no, that's not a harmful monopoly, because maybe they raised the price of glasses because the price of energy went up, or the price of labor went up, or, the moon is in Venus. And so,
or because COVID happened, right? And
or because of COVID, and supply shocks.
Supply shocks, and seemingly, those continue to extend as corporate profits soar and bonuses are back for executives at the highest level. But apparently it's a leftist conspiracy theory that price gouging is...
Yeah, exactly. Greedflation can't possibly be true because we have a model where we have a perfectly spherical economy of uniform density gliding around on a frictionless surface where this could never possibly occur. So Bork says you need to use one of these mathematical models to prove what the origin of this is. And by like an incredible coincidence, everybody who knows how to make and interpret these models is an economist at the University of Chicago who makes them for money. And they always show that nothing bad is going on here and the monopoly is good, actually. So that's part one, right? You get this monopolization and the reduction of choice. But it's not just that, which is why the answer in this book is not just antitrust. The other thing that happens when you have concentration in a sector is regulatory capture. When a sector is composed of hundreds of squabbling companies that are actually competing with one another, they can't agree on a set of regulatory priorities. If you think back to the Napster wars, that was a time when a tech sector that was an order of magnitude larger than the entertainment companies just got its ass handed to it in every single forum. And the way that happened was that there were 7 entertainment companies. And they said the same thing to every judge, every regulator, every lawmaker, every policymaker. And there were hundreds of tech companies, and they couldn't even agree on how to cater a meeting where they would negotiate what that policy would be. Now, today, tech is so concentrated, it's got a Habsburg jaw, and it has totally captured its regulators. And that lets it both under and over-regulate tech. On the one hand, you have an under-regulation where things that would be illegal if you did them without an app become somehow legal if you do them with an app, violating your privacy or your rights as a consumer or your labor rights. And on the other hand, we have over-regulation, where the historic tactics used by tech companies themselves to compete, which is reverse engineering and making interoperable devices. So,
that was going to be my next question. Yeah. I mean, because you focus a lot on I can't say it. Interoperability.
I know, it's hard.
Operability.
And it's not just interoperability, it's adversarial interoperability, which talk about a mouthful.
Yeah. But if you could define that's a really important part of your book.
It really is. Interoperability is just a potential for one thing to work with another thing. Anyone's shoelaces go in your sneakers. Anyone's gas goes in your gas tank. Anyone's butter can go on your bread. And the company doesn't get to tell you whose accessories or components or software or whatever you can use. Today, you have companies that have figured out how to lock you into using their apps with their device, to using their client to access their server, to using their ink with their printer, and so on. And it's not really a technical move. It's not that they have figured out how to make a printer that no one can figure out how to reverse engineer and modify so it can take anyone's ink. Instead, they've gotten a law passed that makes that kind of reverse engineering into a felony. In fact, it's a whole suite of laws that today we just call IP law, but it's this thicket of these very exotic legal theories like anti-circumvention and tortious interference with contract and cybersecurity and so on that can all be overlapped with one another to make it illegal to reverse engineer, modify, repair, or alter devices so that they do what you want them to do and not what the shareholders of the company want them to do. It's what Jay Freeman calls felony contempt of business model. So while Apple was once able to save its bacon when Microsoft was killing the Mac by refusing to upgrade Microsoft Office for the Mac. So if you had a Mac, you just really couldn't read Word or Excel or PowerPoint files that the 95% of the market was offering you because they were all using Windows. And rather than just like begging Bill Gates to fix Office for the Mac, they reverse engineered Office and they made iWork, Pages, Numbers, and Keynote just perfectly read and write those files so that you didn't have to choose between using a Mac and being able to talk to Windows users. Or when Facebook kicked off, everyone was on MySpace. And they didn't say, oh, come hang out on Facebook and wait for your friends to wise up and join you here the way we're expected to do today if we leave Twitter for Mastodon. What they did was they gave you a bot where if you gave it your login and password, it would visit Facebook or MySpace several times a day, pretend to be you, get everything waiting for you, and pop them in your inbox on Facebook. So that you didn't have to choose between the people you loved on MySpace and the service you preferred on Facebook. Today, if you tried to do that to Facebook or Twitter or Apple, they would bomb you till the rubble bounced. They reduce you to a radioactive crater by saying you were a tortious interferer with contract, that you violated Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, you violated the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So this felony contempt of business model prevents you from doing unto them what they did unto the companies that came before them. And this is how you end up with companies that have this winner-take-all market, right? It's not just that they were able to buy their competitors. It's not just that they were able to use predatory pricing. It's not just that they were able to cheat you on your privacy, labor, and consumer rights. It's also that they prevent you from mobilizing technology in your service to allow you to block the parts of the product that you don't like and use the part that you do. Half of the web is using an ad blocker. 0 app users are using an ad blocker because reverse engineering the app is a felony punishable by a 5-year prison sentence and a $500,000 fine under Section 1201 of the DMCA. An app is just a web page that's been wrapped in just enough IP to make it a crime to adapt it so that it doesn't violate your privacy.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, I think, in large part due to the fact that the problems of commodification that you talk about in your book as well, and how there was a moment in the aughts of the internet, essentially, where there was more fair use and there was the ability to have a free and more open internet. But that quickly changed, and I think a lot of people circle the name Bill Gates when it comes to intellectual property in the web. How appropriate is that to draw it to people like him, or at least to have him be the figurehead of some of the enclosure of IP?
Sure. I mean, Gates is definitely in for some guillotining when the time comes, right? But I think that it's a mistake to locate this in the individual moral failings of individuals.
Sure.
They are like amoral monsters, but we created a system that was always going to elevate those people, right? We created a system where the person with the worst ideas in the business would win every argument. Because whereas at one point you could have had someone at Google saying, hey, let's enshitify our product by making maps almost unusable in order to cram it full of lots of ads. And someone else in the room would have said, well, if we do that, maybe the FTC will ding us for unfair business practices. Maybe our competitors will start to poach our users and they'll be able to integrate other maps products with whatever devices they're using and what have you. And also, I would experience a moral injury because I really care about maps. I missed my kids' Little League games to meet our deadlines on this. And it gives me a warm glow to think about all the people who find their way home using this product that I work on. And back then they could win that argument, not just by talking about moral injury, but also by talking about the real business penalties that would arise as a consequence of engaging in this conduct. And today, all that's left is moral injury. Right? All that's left is I'd feel icky if you did this. And they're like, well, money talks and bullshit walks. Right? It's not, that I think that markets solve all of our problems, but I do think markets create a lot more problems if they can operate without any discipline from labor, from users taking self-help measures, from competitors, or from regulators. And so this brings me to the second half of the book, which is really shovel-ready plans for unrigging these markets, for making the internet a better place, for building a new good internet that's a worthy successor to our old good internet, and that makes, the shitternet that we live with now into just sort of an unfortunate transitional phase. And those remedies, yes, some of them are antitrust, for sure. And some of them are things like privacy remedies. And I think, we underestimate, first of all, just how bad privacy law is in this country, but second of all, how politically potent a privacy platform could be. This country has not passed a broadly applicable privacy law since Robert Bork. During the Robert Bork hearings, someone leaked his video records to a newspaper in Washington, D.C., and we got to find out what he was renting. It wasn't even all that embarrassing. But this spooked Congress so badly that they passed a law that criminalizes leaking someone's video records. That's the last time we passed a broadly applicable law on privacy. And in the 25 years since, we have had this bonanza of privacy harms. And there are so many areas where people are really worried about privacy, right? You might be, and some of them are things I don't even agree with, right? Like some people might be, oh, well, TikTok is like an agent of the Chinese government and they're spying on military personnel. And if you're worried about that, yeah, sure. How about we just make them stop spying?
Well,
right? And maybe you're worried.
Yes. That's just when you hear that, what screams to me is that's a meta lobbyist essentially freaking out about their losing some of their market
100%.
share for Instagram.
But I don't have to agree with them to agree that privacy would be good. And if they're on my side, then fine. Or if the people they've spooked are on my side. If you think that Instagram is making your daughter unhappy and giving her body positivity problems, well, that's all down to targeting. So let's end the targeting and we end the targeted manipulation. If you think Facebook is using big data to make your uncle a QAnon, well, that's all targeting too. Let's end that. If you're worried that your local newspaper is having 51 cents out of every ad dollar scooped up by Google or Facebook because they're doing surveillance advertising, let's ban surveillance advertising and switch to context-based advertising, where you, instead of auctioning off ad spots based on who's reading an article, you auction it off based on what the article's about, which is something that would always give more power to publishers than it does to advertisers, because while no newspaper, even the New York Times, is ever going to know as much about you as Google and Facebook know, no tech company will ever know as much about a publisher's content as the publisher themselves know. So there is this incredible potential coalition of parties who would say not privacy only, but privacy first. Like, let's fix the privacy area here and see if that doesn't make a big dent in all these things that we all care about, even if we don't all agree that they're problems. We all care about these problems sincerely, and we can make a difference here. So let's start to constrain tech. Let's pass meaningful labor, privacy, and consumer protection laws. And we're seeing this in the FTC suits against Facebook, the DOJ case against Google. We're seeing bipartisan action in Congress in a way that I think most people haven't even twigged to. Like, there's a law in the Senate pending, a bill rather, called the America Act, whose two main sponsors are Elizabeth Warren and Ted Cruz. Right? That is a very bipartisan consensus. Very rare we get that kind of thing. So that's stage two. Stage one, do antitrust. That's what we're getting right now. In the first time in 2 generations, we're seeing regulators in Canada, the UK, the US, the EU, Australia, and even China taking aim at tech companies and wanting to do antitrust, and not just them, but across the board in many sectors. Step two, start enforcing privacy, labor, and fair dealing laws when we're dealing with these tech companies. And step three, restore the right of users and their proxies, be they startups or community groups or tinkerers or hackers or open source projects, to decompose these pre-feast menus where in order to talk to your friends on Facebook, you also have to be spied on by Facebook, into an a la carte menu where you install the blocker that says, yeah, I'm talking to my friends, but you don't get to spy on me, while we're waiting for these regulations to do their job, so that we're not just hoping that enforcers enforce the law that we have, or that lawmakers pass better laws, that we can also seize the means of computation and take our own measures. And my theory for how all of this stuff kind of coheres goes back to my arch nemesis, Milton Friedman, another court sorcerer of Ronald Reagan, who was a stone freak because you have, in the post-New Deal world, this moment where we have more broadly shared prosperity than any time in American history, wildly imperfect, failing on gender and racial and sexuality lines, not protecting indigenous people as much as it could, but also like creating the base through which we have civil rights movements and gender equity movements and queer rights movements and crip rights movements and so on. And whereas some critics of this consensus are like, it's not going far enough, Milton Friedman was like, it's gone too far. We need to put it all back in a box. And people would say, like Milton, people like, the prospect of their kids going to college or having a dignified retirement or there being Medicare and Medicaid. How are you going to convince them to go back to being forelock-tugging plebs? And he would say, in times of crisis, ideas lying around can move from the periphery to the center. Our job is to keep these ideas lying around so that when the next crisis comes, these ideas can go from being impossible to being inevitable. And say what you will about Friedman, he was fucking right about that, right? That's how we got the world we're living in now. An oil crisis opened the opportunity for him. And if there's one thing that tech is giving us, it's a lot of crises. So, I like to think that now that Satan has taken Milton Friedman to hell and he's been down there since 2006, that when he hears his words in my mouth, he gargles a curse around that red hot iron bar that's protruding from his jaw as the demons turn the spit. But you have to give him credit for having gotten this one right. And, why should we abandon this tactic that he has? So tech gives us all these crises. Every time the crisis emerges, we do the same thing we did last time, but harder, and hope for a different outcome. Producing these shovel-ready ideas, these imaginaries of how things can be better, I think is a way into the next step, which is demanding better the next time the crisis comes.
Yeah. Well, Cory, I really appreciate that imagery, if nothing else. But the discussion was excellent, and I really hope people pick up your book. It's called The Internet Con: How to Seize the Means of Computation. Thanks so much, Cory, for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And the new novel, again, is The Lost Cause, a solar punk climate novel that Naomi Klein and Bill McKibben and Rebecca Solnit all say nice things about.
Well, that is quite a roster of people that appreciate the book. We'll put a link to all of that in the description wherever we're listening to this. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Wherever anyone is listening to this or watching, appreciate it, Cory.
It was great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. Thank you. All right, folks, quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by Raga Makawi to talk about Sudan. We are back, and we are joined now by Raga Makawi, researcher at the London School of Economics, editor of the magazine African Arguments. Raga, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so much of our focus on the show has been recently about the atrocities in Gaza, obviously, but the humanitarian crisis in Sudan is another dire situation that is not being addressed. Millions displaced, massive refugee crisis, and then, of course, these massacres. If you could just give us a sense of where we are since the fighting broke out in April of this year.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's been 8 months of complete mayhem on the ground. Majority of the population have been displaced to neighboring countries. From what I hear, upwards of 5 or 6 million people have relocated to Egypt and are living under really dire circumstances. Others who were able to made their way down to the east to find refuge in Ethiopia, others all the way down to the south. The population that has remained in Khartoum and in neighboring areas, they're living under really difficult circumstances, with the RSF spread out and controlling exits and entry points into Khartoum. Every aspect of their life is controlled in very problematic ways. So they don't have access to food, no access to electricity, no access to medicine and or life-saving services.
And can you explain for our audience what the RSF is in Sudan?
Sure. So the RSF is short for the Rapid Defense Forces, and it's a paramilitary group that the Sudanese army, which is also the Sudanese state, created in the last 10 years in order to be able to manage the country's unrestful periphery. So militia creation and militia management is a very old governance tactic in Sudan. And the Rapid Defense Forces is just the latest version of a historic mechanism of governance in Sudan.
And why were they created? I mean, the Sudanese armed forces are, the official military kind of structure within the country. They outsourced this to the RSF, and this seems to be like an incredibly destructive force that I would imagine you could see coming, because why are you outsourcing this except to create like essentially a mercenary group with less oversight?
Sure, it's counterinsurgency on the cheap, basically, for a central state that has multiple warring fronts across all of Sudan, as a direct response to their poor governance policies and failure to rule properly, has meant that the army itself is not capable of stepping in at every time and every place and dealing with dissent in a proper way. And so what they do is they arm certain factions and groups with tribal affiliations in certain areas to ensure that they're able to control these areas with minimum amount of intervention and also cost.
Yeah, I mean, and this, like, I remember in the early 2000s, Darfur being in the news, and I was a kid at that point, obviously. But this, just to say, like, this is to underscore how much Sudan has lived through, and the genocide that the Sudanese people have experienced, and then this incredibly horrific violence that's happening today. How does that history of the early 2000s fit into the events of today? Are these groups connected? What is the kind of broader political situation that led us to this moment as well?
Absolutely, yes. So the kind of conflict that we saw take place in Darfur almost 20 years ago to date is emerging or re-emerging once again, although this time with more problematic policies, because back in 2004 and 2005, there was more international appetite to step in and try and resolve Darfur's problem. As you have just said, different kind of interventions led to peace agreements that had, to an extent, managed the situation just at the surface. Below, the structural problems and the root causes of these crises were never resolved, and the state's solution to them was to continue maintaining a low level, a low intense level of securitization and militarization of Darfur and other peripheries through paramilitary groups as this one. And unfortunately, they were again attacking the same the same tribes and the same ethnicities that they had back in the day. I mean, there is there's a sense of continuity with the same politics, but perhaps Sudan has gone through a revolution in the last 5 years. So, I mean, there is a difference in terms of the conditions that shape the current war, but obviously similar tendencies or kind of similarities with 10 years ago do exist.
And that is the targeting of specific groups with violence. Who are the groups that are targeted, and what are the details really of the massacres that we're seeing?
In Darfur specifically, there have been kind of reports about RSF, which are mostly Arab nomadic groups. They're targeting of Black indigenous tribes, especially in Western Darfur, places like Janina. Groups like Al-Masalit, the horrific killing and butchering of their leadership. And as a result, the influx of refugees from West Darfur into Chad to seek refuge. The kind of the contentious politics that exist between these different tribes with the different kind of ethnic makeups has to do primarily with how the states have managed economic and land relations in a place as diverse as Darfur. Obviously in very, very problematic ways, and by basically arming one group as opposed to the other, favoring one group as opposed to the other, the consequences were dire.
Well, I know you have a heart out, so I wish we could speak for longer, but I really appreciate your time today. Raga Makawi, researcher at the London School of Economics, editor of the magazine African Arguments, and we'll put a link to that magazine in the description wherever you're listening to or watching this. Thank you for your time today. All right, folks, with that, we're going to wrap up the first hour of this program. Yeah, I got lost in my conversation with Cory and then didn't realize she had a heart out at 1, so I had many more questions, but we will be keeping up on this incredibly important story, obviously. So much of what she said, and I listened to her on a podcast, people can look that up. Maybe we'll put a link to that as well if they want to hear more from it, which was on the magazine's website, African Arguments. She speaks about the hyper-militarization of Sudan, and that reminds me of, what Israel is, right? Like, what does that have? Yeah. What kind of effect does that have on a population when so many weapons and so much money and so much of the state is oriented towards a military mindset? And it is the structural underbelly of systemic violence.
You prepare for violence, you get it.
Yep. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Damn, I wasn't even here it was my birthday, but we did record a conversation with Vaclav Masic-Sanchez about Guatemala and the lawfare going on against Bernardo Arevalo as he tries to take the presidency in January. They have, again, such a long lame duck period that, from whenever September or August when the elections were held to January. That's too long for, I think, Central America. That gives the OAS and, well, I mean, who knows what role the OAS, and I think we get into that in this case, but that's too long of a time to let people do. But yeah, check that out. And also I'm wearing right now. Bradley, if you could drop your, thank you.
Look at that. There he is.
New at the leftreckoning.com/store, I believe is the website. We have new merchandise for the winter, which is this very warm, probably too warm for maybe the studio. I was thinking about opening the window, but there's construction going on. But nice and warm crew neck sweatshirt that I'm wearing. So check that out.
It is very nice. I love the hat as well that I.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually, I don't think people know this because I don't do it for my hair, but I am a hat wearer. I am somebody that
really
doesn't wash my hair too much on the weekend, get the natural oils back, and I'll just throw a cap back on. Yeah.
Like a baseball
cap. Yeah. I got a few ones that I really like. So maybe I'll just wear the Left Reckoning one on Casual Friday or something like that. On ESVN today, we are going to give our picks against the spread. Bradley went 3-0 last week. It was a little bit scary for me because this is the time of the year when he starts to heat up. We'll be talking about that, youtube.com/ESVN show at 4 today. That's where we have the most of our fun competing against one another. We've determined that we're going to do like a hot wing style punishment. Whoever loses, more food play. But like I had that beer that Brandon from Kentucky sent that had Tabasco sauce or whatever in it, or jalapeno.
It was a habanero.
Habanero. Holy moly!
Yeah, it was good.
It was good, but like
really spicy.
you instinctively take a drink when you have something spicy to wash it down, and I just kept doing that. But that was the thing that was setting my mouth on fire. So that was a very bizarre thing to experience. Anyway, do we have Brandon and Binder? We have Brandon at least, who's I guess, calling from underneath like the stairs, the Harry
That's
Potter,
that European,
the Harry Potter bedroom, I guess. We can't see, but he, low
we can't
ceilings.
see or hear, Brandon. Oh, now we can.
Okay, I was muted there.
No, your mic is not connected.
We're
you gotta
getting
go to
your,
settings.
this is your
Computer
mic. We're not coming through your actual microphone. Bradley's gonna.
There we go.
Is it better?
Yep,
Yeah.
there you go.
Are you finally settled in?
Oh, trying to be.
Yeah.
We already like a.
What's happening on the discourse, Brandon?
Oh yeah, so we should have an episode out for you this weekend. We are getting into the holiday mood, but ideally we're going to amp up production. And yeah, it's going to be on the ceasefire in Israel, or like rather the end of the ceasefire, and an update on the GOP race. And then we should have another episode coming out about the death of Henry Kissinger.
Very nice. All right, check that out. Binder, what's happening on Scam Economy and Doomed? And hello to you.
Hello, everybody. Scam Economy episode. I promise you all it's coming out soon. But on Doomed this week, basically did an episode looking at a few different clips on a variety of topics. Looked at the, I don't know if you guys watched this, probably did, that Ben Shapiro promoting that Daily Wire movie, Lady Ballers, excuse me. And
Daily Ballers.
Daily Ballers probably would have been a better movie. But Lady Ballers, and he accidentally lets a number of interesting things slip in his promotion. Of it.
Yeah.
And then looked at this TikTok survey study that's been going around to argue that the Free Palestine hashtag and other pro-Palestine hashtags should be banned on TikTok. And then, I looked at the study. Someone reached out to me who looked at the raw data and plotted it in their own way without the I guess you can call it propagandized version that was going around in the form of the charts that you were seeing showing TikTok was somehow super anti-Semitic. And of course, that chart conflated anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric. But the breakdown of the raw data shows that actually TikTok is below Twitter, television, and a variety of other things. So yeah, check it out. Doomedcast.com for the podcast version of the show.
Is that even if Bender, sorry to interrupt, but is that even if you control for the anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism conflation, or is that actually just looking at anti-Semitism?
What the person who plotted the raw data on, so the person who did the study put out the one conflating anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric, and the part of the main thing of the study was to show that more time spent on a platform makes you more anti-Semitic or anti-Israel or whatever.
The Nikki Haley special, yeah.
The one that I'm pretty sure that's the study that Nikki Haley was mentioning in the debate yesterday.
The 17%
every half hour.
Yeah.
But what this person who sent me their own plotted, like they looked at the raw data because the raw data is available on GitHub, and they plotted each individual question on its own. So if you look at specific questions, here, if you give me a second, are we in the second half yet or no?
No, yeah, but we can go transition if you wanted to go into that. We can play the Nikki Haley thing.
While we're in the break, I'll pull up some of those question specifically and what the data found. But youtube.com/Matt Binder. If you want to catch the rest of this, you got to go to join us in the fun half.
All right. 646-257-3920. See you there.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
We bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Oh. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Yes, we've been talking about jingle smells in the break. I had assumed that it was a fart joke just because of the I mean, that obviously like Occam's razor, but it's not. It's related to the fact that the guy is a garbage man, right? And that's how he
Garbage day.
Yeah, right. Right.
Sorry.
Well, I don't even know what that's a reference to, but I pretended. Binder, you had something that you wanted to open the fun half with, so let's start there.
Oh, we lost your audio.
We lost
Binder,
your audio.
Actually.
Is no one going to
Am I coming in laggy or did I fix it?
No, you fixed it.
Okay, cool. Because I turned off the audio because I was coughing, and then I forgot to turn it back on.
Wait,
all right.
Hold on, Brandon. What did you say? And then we'll get into it.
You keep joking about what jingle smells is not, but this is legitimately the first time I'm hearing it. I thought it was, like I said, like Christmas-based, like fart kink.
It's something like
It's like a Sean Hannity produced Rumble movie.
Yes.
About like So some guy basically deputizes himself to be like another
And
Christmas.
he's an anti-woke Santa, and he's a
Yeah.
garbage
Okay.
man that finds all the like woke or the anti-woke toys and
That's
the
right.
garbage.
There's an anti-woke action figure that gets like taken off the shelves, and he tasks himself with like delivering.
And he collects them. Yes,
other
yes.
places.
That sounds terrible. It sounds like bad Santa, but not funny.
That's
Exactly.
I think that was the intention behind the movie.
Yeah, I mean they don't know how to like to create any kind of original thing. They just are so derivative. I mean, Lady Ballers, as you have pointed out on Twitter,
Yeah. Juana
Brandon
Man.
is Juana Man.
No, Jingle.
Juana Man I was going to say Lady Ballers has none of the artistic integrity that Juana Man actually has. Like, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, no. Jingle Smells is just Jingle all the way. If the Turbo Man action figure was like canceled because somebody put like the N-word into the programming.
Wait,
Yeah.
what? How did I
Oh,
guess
okay.
this?
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Right. Okay. Bender, you want to comment on this Nikki Haley thing?
Yes, sure. So there was a study that was going around. Here, if you want to pull it up, I put the not the one that I just put in there. That's the one from the person who looked through the raw data themselves. But here's the one from it's that last one I just dropped in there, Bradley, from Anthony Goldblum. And basically he says a new survey suggests TikTok is a meaningful driver of a surge in anti-Semitism.
Okay,
Spending at
first
least
my first question is, how is anti-Semitism defined?
Oh, well, wait for this. Spending at least 30 minutes a day on TikTok increases the chances a respondent holds anti-Semitic or anti-Israel views by 17%, compared with 6% for Instagram and 2% for X. And then the actual graph puts on the graph, this is the relationship between platform usage and anti-Semitic / anti-Israel views.
Yeah.
It's almost like if they were the same thing, you wouldn't have to keep doing that clumsy slash thing the whole time.
Exactly.
This is not a
Right.
good survey. But
Right.
so my question would be: was the question asked in the survey document, like or rather, whatever like the criteria was it measured as anti-Israel and anti-Semitic separately, and then they combined them in the after, or did they just and like because one was very high and one was very low, it was clear, or were the two conflated in the intake, like or sort of the input as well? Because I mean, either one is terrible. But
yeah,
I wonder
luckily,
how
this person-
bad this is.
Right. So there's still a lot of this data to look through here. But someone has pulled the raw data and plotted some of the specific questions, because basically they asked very specific questions, and this chart that we just pulled up is like an amalgamation of all those questions. Some of them are questions that can be seen as anti-Semitic. Some of them are questions that can be seen as anti-Israel. But those are, like we were just saying, are two distinct things. And you could pull up that other post that I put in there. It's the one I posted before. It accidentally sent twice. I don't know why, but it's the same tweet.
Okay, but these are the questions. Do you want me to read it? Because I have it on the big screen. Compared to other or to other groups, Jewish people have to the Holocaust just to further their political agenda. Jewish people chase money more than other people do. I mean, that's obviously anti-Semitic. But then here we go. Israel and its supporters are a bad influence on our democracy. Israel can get away with anything because its supporters control the media. And Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. Now, I mean, those final three there clearly are related to Israel's assault on Gaza, I would say.
Right.
And
but if you look at the chart, though, pull it back up, Bradley.
But the two media ones, though, I want to say, like, the first one is anti-Semitic because it's about Jewish people. Israel supporters controlling the media isn't explicitly about Jewish people. It can be, right? But it can also be about the fact that...
Like, I don't know if Dana Bash is Jewish. She's an Israel supporter.
Right. I mean, but like our national
Maybe she is,
security establishment and like the white Western power structure has oversized influence in the media, and they are pro-Israel. That's what I would say about that.
Right.
I would also say that it's not surprising that there's a lot of anti-Semitism in America or online or being diffused out there, considering, again, this is the United States of America. I think that's just like to be taken. I think you still shouldn't conflate it with genuine anti-Israel statements and like pro-Palestinian statements at that.
Right. So if you look at that chart, though, you'll see that for pretty much every question, there's this green line that's at the very bottom. Now, with the x-axis is time spent on. So the more time spent on, the more or less someone agrees with those views. Now, that green line is on the bottom for almost every single one. That green line is the TikTok data. The blue line that's on top for almost every single one, that's
is
Twitter.
X. Yeah, Twitter. Yeah. and the ones at the top, the more explicitly anti-Semitic ones, if we can put that back up here. Oh, it is. Sorry. Like you see that Twitter is at the top of every category, but also there's a decrease in the TikTok line there for the most explicitly anti-Semitic ones.
Right. So the more time you spend on TikTok, apparently, the less anti-Semitic you get, unless you conflate the Israel ones on the bottom there, where you see that TikTok rises as you spend more time on there. And because that's really an effect of TikTok being a community that skews very young. It's from its very earliest days. People seem to forget that TikTok started when ByteDance wanted to roll out a US version of TikTok because they have their own one in China. And to do so, they bought another app, another company called Musical.ly, which was basically an app for like young kids and teens to like record themselves lip syncing to music. And they bought that app and they rebranded it as TikTok. So from its very founding, it was already skewing very young. It continues to skew young. And we know young people have pro-Palestine views. I mean, it's not really a chicken or an egg scenario because you could probably find young people who aren't on TikTok who have the same pro-Palestine views. The people are using TikTok to share the views they already hold, and those views just happen to be pro-Palestine.
I would also...
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that I think that it's unfair for the X chart not to control for Elon Musk, because I feel like if you just like remove him from the data set, the chart that line goes down like at least 90%.
What if you control for blue checks? Then we're like seeing
it's the least racist platform. It's the least racist platform online.
Oh yeah. Stella the dog writes in saying, "Wow, guys, your anti-Semitism is showing. Jews control the media is anti-Semitism. Israel is Nazis is anti-Semitism. Just wow." I think I literally said that the Jews control the media one is anti-Semitic.
Is anti-Semitism, yeah.
And I don't agree.
But that is a distinct point. Then media supporters support the state of Israel as it's constructed now, or are as shorthand Zionists, and that is not to say anything about their religion. There's plenty like
Christian
Mike Huckabee
Zionists.
is a Zionist.
Yes.
When I say Zionist, I use Zionist because guess what? Like I don't want to say Israeli, despite the fact that Israeli society is very hawkish with regards to Palestinians. I don't want to say Israelis because there's lots of Israelis that don't support it.
Yeah.
But I do say Zionist because whether you're a liberal Zionist or a right-wing Zionist, I do think like that is the most precise label, despite what people have. And I'll admit, like when I first got into this business, I was skittish about using that word because it has been decoded by the same media we're talking about as meaning anti-Semitism. Surprise, IMer. That's the entire conversation we're having right now as 17,000 Palestinians are killed, right?
And I just want to also say, too, like Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. I mean, I don't think that that's anti-Semitic at all. Like, you can say it's hyperbolic, and you can say that we should be careful because obviously...
And it doesn't rise to the level of Holocaust yet?
Yeah, I mean, the Holocaust, 6 million people, 6 million Jews were killed. Like, that is one of the worst crimes in the history of the world, if not the worst crime. But to say that Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews, if you just want to refer to crimes of genocide... Well, take it up with Roz Siegel and other scholars, literal Holocaust scholars, who say that these are crimes of genocide.
Well, and you also have Zionists saying that actually Hamas is the Nazis, which is also a ludicrous comparison. So, yeah, I mean...
Douglas Murray said that the Nazis didn't actually take any pleasure in killing Jews during the Holocaust. They drank themselves almost to death because of how guilty they felt.
I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu says that that Hitler got the idea of extermination from the Palestinian Grand Mufti, which is a complete lie and conspiracy theory meant to continuously, dehumanize the Palestinians and make it so that people in Israel and others believe that the Palestinians are a greater threat to them than Nazis. It's a complete exploitation of the generational trauma of the Holocaust. So I hope that clears it up for you.
Yeah, obviously the statement Jewish people talk about the Holocaust just to further political agenda, that is blatantly anti-Semitic. The state of Israel does cynically use the legacy of the Holocaust towards ends. And I'm sorry, you can't have a grown-up conversation about this nation state that we give billions of dollars worth of bombs to unless you are willing to be grown up about that, frankly.
I mean, Sell the Dog is continuously writing in saying you guys should visit the Holocaust Museum. You have no understanding of how the term Zionist was used to perpetuate the Holocaust. I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I'll never forget seeing all the shoes lined up together. And I went there as a kid. And it's one of the, as I just said, it is, if not, one of the worst crimes that humanity has ever engaged in, if not the worst.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's distinct.
But Zionism, conflating Zionists with Judaism is.
I think it is fucking offensive.
It is
to say that what we're doing is actually preparing the ground for more killing, because I think actually that's what Zionists are doing right now. And all these games that we're playing, we have to be super sensitive about how we describe the killing of. I mean, who is it? Nick Kristof, not a leftist by any sense of imagination, is saying. I'm not sure where. What's his name from Current Affairs got this quote from, where Nick Kristof is publishing. But he writes, I'm just trying to pull it up here, that the comparison is, oh yeah, here it goes. Nick Kristof, no less, says that the massacre of Gazan civilians is comparable to the Rwandan genocide. So I guess maybe let's take it out of the context of World War II. Rwanda. Congratulations, Israel. That's the comparison now. If fine, maybe World War II and Nazis and the Holocaust plays too much of a role in how we conceptualize foreign policy stuff. Well, it
plays too much of a role in how we conceptualize. I mean, if genocides can only be considered genocides when they rise to the level of the Holocaust, then oh my God, are we in a world that I don't even want to be in? Because genocides happen at smaller scales. We just had a guest on to talk about genocide in Sudan. So crimes of genocide are crimes of genocide,
yeah.
and that's
we are not setting the table for another Holocaust. Our Secretary of State is going around the Middle East saying, "Hey, we're trying to ethnically cleanse these Palestinians out of this state of Israel. Do you want to take them?" That's where we're at now. And so these phantoms that actually we're doing another Holocaust, I'm sorry, that is a product of propaganda. And that is Israel itself has used that cynically. So I'm sorry, I don't take instruction on this.
And let me also just say too that I believe that the conflation of Zionism with Judaism is inherently anti-Semitic. It's like saying that the only real form of being a Muslim is to be a religious fundamentalist or a religious nationalist. The only